Okay, now we come to Isaiah 36, 30 and 37. Okay, where now King Hezekiah is facing Sennacherib. Who is Sennacherib? The Assyrian king who came down the coast, destroying and pillaging all these various nations as he goes. And then he comes to Lachish, destroyed Lachish in the siege of Lachish, and he was going to Libnah, another town nearby. And even as he does that, he's very close to Jerusalem, the jewel in the crown. Yeah, that would be the ultimate prize if he could take Jerusalem. So here, King Sennacherib is outside, as he continues his campaign of pillaging. He sends word to Hezekiah in Jerusalem, was king then, and Isaiah was in Jerusalem, the prophet. And he sends his general Rabshakeh to speak to Hezekiah in Jerusalem, albeit he was not invited in, so he shouted outside the city, and Hezekiah sent people to listen to him and on the city walls. So he shouted, "Come out! Why? Who are you trusting in there? You have no defense against us." Egypt, chapter 36, verse 6 says, "Are you trusting in the staff of a broken reed on Egypt?" This little reed, you're trusting, you're leaning on him, he's going to break and pierce you. Listen to that exchange. Who are you trusting in there? Even the horsemen, the horses of Egypt. Okay, I can give you 2,000 horses and see if you can even find 2,000 fighting men in the city of Jerusalem to ride them. The scorn. So the people that Hezekiah said, "Shh, don't speak in Hebrew. The people in Jerusalem might understand, they'll be fearful. They'll speak in Aramaic." Rakshesh said, "No, I will speak in Hebrew. Come out, or else will come and get you, and will surround you, and you can't. You die in there with no food or drink. Eat your own poop and drink your own urine." So the fearful words, it's like, gosh. So who are you trusting? God? What God? Look at the other nations that we've just conquered them. They're gods too. They didn't help them. And you're trusting in your, God? Listen to what Hezekiah did. Never called him King Hezekiah. He said, Hezekiah. Listen to what Hezekiah did. He closed the other synagogues in the outside city and made people only to worship in Jerusalem. So there's a reason for it. Now, obviously, our enemy, investigates us and use our weak points against us. Our enemies are not stupid people. Don't underestimate Satan. He knows all about you, and he can use it against you, scorn you. So the reason for closing the other synagogues was they did not have proper priests there, so they were sacrificing and worshiping willy-nilly, not according to what God commands. So it's better to close them down, have them all come to Jerusalem where the proper worship is. But Hezekiah did not surrender. And, so Rabshakeh or whatever went back to Sennacherib. So now Sennacherib sends a personal letter to Hezekiah. His general did not work, so now he sends a personal letter to Hezekiah. And if you're in Hezekiah's position, you would be fearful, because if you look out, we know how many of Assyrian troops are out there, because it's recorded, 185,000 men plus a few more outside the city walls. Oh my goodness, how are we going to escape this? Like he said, even if I were to give you 2,000 horses, you can't find 2,000 horsemen to ride them. You have nothing to defend yourself in the city from me. So Hezekiah took the letter of Sennacherib, went to the temple, laid it before God, and said, "Lord, this is what I'm facing. Help me, okay? Restore me. This is your people. And God spoke to Isaiah and said, the Assyrians will not come into this city. The Assyrians will never come in. I will, protect you. And there is a promise of deliverance. And Sennacherib will get word from Nineveh that he is needed back in Nineveh, and then he will leave, and he will be killed there. That will be the end of him. So even as Sennacherib was preparing to go back to Nineveh that night, the angel of the Lord killed 185,000 of his men, and left him 12 to take back to Nineveh with. And this is recorded in a few places, not just in 2 Kings 20, in Isaiah. It's also recorded in Herodotus books, also in the Assyrian annals, of what happened. So in Herodotus, the record is that mice killed the Sennacherib's army. So possibly because but in the Bible it says the angel of the Lord. Well, obviously the angel of the Lord used something to kill them. Possibly mice, because the suspicion is because their arrows and spears have got leather thongs, and the rats, carrying bubonic plague came to eat those leather things, and they possibly were there for a while already, but that night the bubonic plague really came upon them and killed 185,000 of Sennacherib's men, leading him to go home with 12 of them. And as we know from various records, Sennacherib went home to Nineveh. He besieged Jerusalem but didn't get into the city. And what happens in Nineveh? He went to his temple to worship his God. He was killed by 2 of his sons, who then escaped. And then a third son, Esarhaddon, rose to the throne. And under Esarhaddon, the empire of Assyria, carried on for a while just as powerful, until Ashurbanipal, that was the last of the Assyrian kings. Then the kingdom of Assyria fell and disappeared. So the striking thing is Israel, small as it is, after all these campaigns, right from Egypt to then, was always, but still they remain till today. Whereas empires bigger than them, Egyptian, Assyrians, Babylonians, what have you, have come and gone. The Edomites, I talked about the Edomites last week. The judgment on the Edomites, how God slaughtered them, and and made them disappear. Not all of them, because Herod the Great, his family was from Idumea. They were Edomites. After that, they escaped to Rome, and they kind of carry favor with the Roman royalty or whatever, emperors. And then when Rome took over Judea from the Greeks, they sent Herod back. Since he's from that area, he pretends to be a Jew. He's from that area, so he sent him back as king of Judea. They call him Herod the Usurper. So he enlarged the temple. Why? Because to be a real king of Israel, you have to be associated like Solomon with the temple, to build it, make it more beautiful, to enlarge it. So he did that, thinking the Israelites will recognize him and accept him, but they didn't, and he was evil. And he, King Herod's family plagued Jesus' ministry, and also John the Baptist. We all know about that. And eventually, I think under one of the Herods, James, the brother of John, was killed, and it seems that it pleased the Jewish people. So he went after Peter, and we know in Acts of the Apostle, Peter was in prison, presumably to be the next one to be executed, but God sent angels to free him from prison, and then he went to exile to Rome. And then we don't hear of Peter anymore. Presumably, according to church history, he went to Rome and started the church in Rome before Paul joined him. And in Acts 20 or 12, the last of the Herods was recorded as dying, and worms ate his body. So that was the final legacy of the Edomites, destroyed. Edomites were the descendants of Esau, destroyed completely and totally. And even as we read this, even as we place before God our crisis, we know He hears. And we can, these lessons, knowing these, then you can really trust God and have courage. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Just as He did for Hezekiah and the Israelites, He will do for us, for you and I, whatever we're facing today. So we read scriptures to bolster our own faith in our own God, that He was the same yesterday, today, and forever. He did not even spare His Son, but sent Him to die for us. So I will continue with Isaiah, which I totally love. So finally finishing with the first part, Isaiah 1 to 39, and then finally 40 to 66, the part that often we Christians quote from. It's exciting stuff.